Yeah, that's kind of cool.
That's very cool. I'm just going to talk to the people here just for a second. Welcome back to Unsung. And just really quick, because we've been sitting here talking and we just want to keep going. So my next guest is a guy that I have known of for quite a while. And unfortunately, we haven't connected quite the way that I would have liked to. So he is here tonight because I have a lot of questions for him, and I might even have some drum questions for him, so just bear with us while we go through that. Anyway, it's Jim Llewellyn, and Jim, how the hell are you?
I'm very good, and I really appreciate you asking me to come out here tonight. I think it's a real honor to be one of your unsung people.
Dude, of course. I think personally there are so many people that I know personally in this town that I think just deserve a little bit more from us.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that
Unsung is really a kind of a Canadian thing, you know, because Canadians are always like downplayed. You know, if you want to get recognized, go to the States.
Sure. And so many Canadians have, because you have to.
Yeah.
You pretty much have to.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree with that. I just don't think, you know, there's enough money and enough commerce and enough people to make the wheels turn the way they should. You know, I don't even think it has to do with anything political. I just think that we're such a big country, so spread out, with not enough people in it, that money just doesn't change hands quick enough. And in the States, when I lived in Baton Rouge, you know, it was just an obvious difference about the States versus Canada, is that the fact that money just flowed, you know, and if somebody wanted to do a record, you just did a record. And there were so many more people and so many more people to connect to. That had a big difference, you know, on the way people did business and also on their relationships. You know,
yeah,
people
that's
were,
very true.
yeah, they just seemed a lot tighter because nobody had to worry, right? Everybody had their thing. I met so many people. Well, my general consensus was if you could play, then it just didn't matter. As long as you could play, as long as you were trying.
Yeah.
Then there was just a collective ego, not a singular one. And I think that's why we may suffer here a little bit. Just because we don't have the commerce, we feel that we have to hang on to things maybe tighter than we actually do.
Yeah.
You know.
We probably keep things a little closer to our chest here. That's for sure.
Yeah, which I suppose is a cultural thing.
Yeah, I think that's a Canadian thing. It's the politeness and the kind of keep to yourself a little bit.
It might be the British side of us, you know.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, which, or the influence, anyway.
Yeah.
Definitely
You know.
the influence.
Sure. Mind you, you know, if I say it, I'd have to say I don't know that it serves any great purpose to be that possessive, to be that. If we're playing a game of poker, yeah, don't show me your cards.
Yeah.
But if we're trying to have a relationship, I should probably know more about you.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, and so, but anyway, you and I were talking about, where were we? What's the, we were talking about Jerry Proppy.
Yeah.
And not saying anything good. Because what good is there to say?
That's right, just cut it out.
Yeah, that jerk. No, Jerry, you know Jerry, and of course I've known Jerry for a long time, and one of those guys.
Yeah.
No, he's a very, very nice guy, and like I said, what I was mentioning was I just did some studio work, or used his studio way back in 1989 to record some original music, and really nice guy, and really made me feel comfortable, and you know, I've never had any problem with anything, and he did a great job, better than I did.
Did he? Yeah. So you felt pretty good with what transpired in the product that came out of it?
No, the only part that I didn't like was some of my stuff, what I did, the way I did it. I was just learning to sing back then too, so there was vocals on the songs.
Oh,
yeah? And they weren't very good.
No?
No. The instrumental stuff was the best.
Right. Well, yeah, aren't we all kind of like that though? Like I mean, I've probably played on over 100 records by now. Well, I have. I've played on over 100 records by now. And I think there might be one song on maybe 4 albums in that 100 that I actually like what I did. You know,
Yeah.
like one song on 4 albums out of 120 albums that I actually go, okay. Everything else I go, Jesus Christ, you know, what was I thinking?
Well,
I know what you mean with that. Like all the stuff that I've done, I've usually been a hired gun coming in. So they weren't hiring me as a drummer to play a bunch of stuff. It was just come in, back me up, give me a nice rhythm track, get paid and go home. You know, so I'd listen to the stuff later when it came out and I'd go, I wouldn't know that was me. Not at all. You know, because I did gospel albums, country albums, rock albums.
Do you ever think about adding something of yourself to it when you're playing, or do you, when you're a hired gun, you know, when you come in and somebody else is doing that stuff, do you ever think, man, I want to, you know, just take a moment here to kind of make this me, or do you just go, man, I better, you know, I'm going to Steve
usually
get
try
the
to-
shit out of this.
Usually try to find something that I can put in there. It might be simple, but I want to make it mine to a degree, right? But quite often I find that as a hired gun, the simpler you play, the better the people like it, and the more likely you get hired back.
Right.
You know, so if you're making a living doing that kind of stuff, then yeah, you got to kind of give the guys what they want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we just did a session a little while ago with an original band I'm working with, and that one I really put some of myself into.
What is that?
it's called Dark Horse is the name of the band.
Okay.
Benjamin Balway is the singer
Oh, no shit.
writer. Yeah.
Oh, so Benjamin, he's playing again and doing
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah. So we did that, and
Just got the fourth mix now. And each time I was going like, can you bring the drums up just a little bit? Can you bring them just up a little bit, the bass drum a little bit more? Like I'm doing this stuff on the hi-hat and the ride cymbal, the bells, I can't hear it. I can hear the rolls and everything are great, but I just want a bit more brass sound in there. Right?
So the high end is getting lost a little bit?
Yeah.
That's-
And sometimes that's
Could be my hearing too, because after almost 50 years of playing drums, I've got a ringing in my ear, both sides, but hits about 4:30, 5 o'clock back here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Tinnitus.
Tinnitus, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's certain,
Peter Erskine also. I mean, so many drummers do, but Peter Erskine, I guess, suffers quite greatly with that.
Oh, is that
tinnitus.
right?
Yeah. And he's a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
And really hits light. I'm surprised.
I think it's cymbals is what does it, right?
Yeah.
And I hate to point fingers, but guitar players sometimes. I've been playing a gig and had a guitar player hit a note that felt like somebody was shoving a screwdriver into my ear, just like. And that's the ear that still is worse than the other one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that can happen, right? I remember, and I blame no one but myself for this, but I was pretty young at the time, like in my 20s, doing a gig, and they had 2 huge wedges, like almost like tower wedges, beside me at this festival or whatever. And the sound guy said, what do you want in them? Just give me everybody, man. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, and but I wanted to make it sound like I knew what I was doing. So I was like, well, just give me, everybody. And so, I play some kick and play toms, and to me it just didn't sound loud enough. And I don't know that I checked everybody. I just said, give me everybody. And it was set up for the guy that played before me more than it was for me, which I think was some kind of, grind metal thing or something.
Yeah.
And so the first fucking note hits, and I almost flew off my chair, and I sat there not being able to get his attention for 2 songs with vertigo. I thought I was going to fall this way, or I was falling off my chair this way. I mean, it was brutal, and I'm surprised I didn't get infinite damage from that, lasting infinite damage. Yeah.
You're lucky.
Yeah, kind of crazy. I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've come out of some concerts with my ears ringing and just takes it sounds like rain roaring, right? Takes 2 days to settle down.
Is it that bad? Yeah.
It was that bad. I took my daughter to see Bon Jovi. And we were up in the first kind of balcony, and the speakers were right there. So a great show, But man, oh man, when we came out of there, I could hardly hear.
All right, right.
So,
It's a problem, man. It's one of those job hazards.
yeah, and I've
Worn earplugs and just don't find them comfortable to play with.
Have you ever tried in-ears, like monitor in-ears?
no, never.
No? Those aren't bad. You know, like it's almost kind of like being in a studio environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I have in-ears in, I kind of, you know, trick myself to think that way, like I'm in the studio. And it actually makes me play a little tighter. And not only that, but hearing everybody that close without, you know, being brutalized from the outside.
Well, that really helps a lot when you can hear everything like that.
Right,
It's like night and day when everything is crystal clear. And it's like when you can hear yourself like that. I know when I first got my electric drums 17 years ago, I realized that they were so much more precise sounding than the acoustics. And stuff that I could get away with on an acoustic did not work on an electric. So I really think that they helped, you know, tighten me up a lot too, you know, and technique-wise, because every attack is like rat-tat-tat-tat-tat, as opposed to dum 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 dum.
Exactly. I found a similar thing with playing my electronic drums in the fact that because they're studio quality sounds, every one of them, you know, at least the Rollins are,
exactly, yeah.
you know, you can blaze around and, you know, play some really cool shit and you sound amazing every time. You know what I mean? Like, because you don't have to pull anything out of the drum.
Yeah.
Everything's right there. The sound is a studio quality sound, 16 or 32 bit. And, you know, so I hit a snare drum, I'm like, damn, that sounds good. I hit the top. And then I play around and I'm like, oh my God, everything is so cohesive, you know, and I'm not even having to try. And then I go to my acoustic kit and everything is tubby and shitty. And, you know, even when it's like a Yamaha recording custom or Maple custom.
Exactly.
And then I'm like, okay, so here's the challenge, is to take how I play and what I sound like at an electronic kit and make myself sound like that when I'm playing acoustically. So how can I have that sort of pleasing sound and make it cohesive, whether it's dynamically that I need to adjust or I don't know, even the movement of my hands or my arms, whatever it is, to get that sonicness that makes me sound so great in the practice.
Yeah.
So it's helped me in that respect. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and it is a huge difference too, because I mean, all of a sudden you don't have to hit your snares hard maybe, but you have to hit your toms a little harder to get that attack when you're going around them. So you're constantly kind of adjusting things. And even if you're mic'd, it's still, acoustics are just a little bit different. You got to draw all that sound out.
Totally. And I think that's where, you know, the rest of your bandmates come into play. Because, you know, I know, I've watched you, I saw the LNM clinic that you did.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was fabulous,
Oh, thank you.
outstanding. And so the one thing that I've known about you and then realized about you watching the video was that, you know, technically you got some shit going on. And you know what you're doing. And so my problem has always been is that when you're doing, you know, like you can't play everything forte. If you're playing 30-second notes, that shit ain't coming out forte.
No.
It's coming out mezzo or piano, right? Because you have to be down at the drums,
Yep.
and you have to be going, you know, more this way than up and down, right? And so, you know, I try and tell guys that at the gig, and not of course every gig, but you know, some of the gigs you play, and guys are just like totally, you know what I mean? Like they're just cranking out, and you're like, dude, I am down a piano right now because I'm trying to express myself, and I can't even hear myself play. So number one, I don't want to bail on this. I don't want to not express myself and play the way I play, but now I have to play like a wind-up monkey,
Yep.
you know, and this ain't the gig for me.
And all the finesse is gone.
All of it. And yet, because they can just, you know, tune that thing to 11, right? They can fucking, you know, it doesn't matter, and they can still play the same way they play. It's coming out that big. And acoustically, of course, because in a small club, you don't have to, there's no reason to mic yourself, you know, like there would be at a, you know, 20,000 seat arena. You are playing to the room, and everybody else is playing over top of the room. right? And so you're never able to put you in there. And I get so frustrated because, you know, the last thing I want to do is sit there doing this.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. Of course, if I intend to do it, then I want to do it.
Yeah.
But when I want to, you know, express myself or whatever, and I can't hear my bass drum, that's a big problem. You know?
Well, you lose all dynamics, like you said. The electric instruments are all electric, and they're on 12, and you're playing an acoustic set, and trying to bring the dynamics up and down depending on what part of the song you're in. And if nobody else is doing it, well, then you might as well just be doing it from here all the time.
Right. Which ain't fun for anybody. And
No.
you're right, dynamics are everything, right? Because, you know, and I know the joke, you know, the guy turns to the drummer, he says, you know, can you, you know, he says something, the drummer says, dynamics. He says, I'm playing as loud as I can. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's a drummer joke, yet I've heard more drummers want to play more dynamically than I've heard other instruments sometimes wanting to be played. And I think that, once again, you know, a sound guy was you know, when sound reinforcement came out, it was just that. It was to reinforce the dynamics of what was happening on stage. And now, it's not sound reinforcement, it's a sound guy. And that guy is sort of an animal and an entity unto himself. Sort of separate. I mean, not the good ones. The good ones, no. I am just going to take but the band has to play dynamically. They have to express themselves in that way. And there are some guys that do it so well that I play with, like my fusion trio, like Steph and Jason Graham, you know, those guys. And then you feel accountable. Like, you know when you're too loud, and you're like, oops, you know, so you're back down, right? And I love that. I love not hammering the shit out of stuff all night long. I mean, sure, if there's that section where there's so much tension, you know?
Yeah.
Great, go for it, and then come back down.
And that's just it, too. If you're always on 12, then there's nowhere to go up at all. But if you can bring it back down to almost nothing, like a whisper, then when you roar, it really makes a difference.
Absolutely, there's all that headroom.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I've also, you know, thought that dynamics are also sort of like one of the best ways to channel the flow of the music and the creativity and where that music wants to go. So let's say you start quietly, and then you get to mezzo forte, and then you get to forte, and then you get to double and triple. When you bring it back down, you can no longer exhaust any more of that channel. Everything you've done has gone through that process.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that you almost like, you know, a river splits off into channels. You cut that channel off. Now you have to go down another channel. And the creativity that comes out of that, just because of dynamics alone, to me, is sometimes astounding where you go in a night. You know? Just how, and you get to the end of the night, you don't even realize, or you're blown away that you could actually pull off some of the things that you played. You know, that it wasn't just coming purely from a technical place, but it was coming from the heart and soul of sharing moments.
And you're listening. You're playing, but you're listening as well. So.
Right, right. I knew this was going to be a good conversation. I just knew it. So yeah, I mean, you and I were talking about a lot of things, and I know we've talked a few minutes about this stuff. I would like to know, just for me, and I'm sure, you know, there might, you know, might be some other people that would like to know where Jim started.
Oh.
Like where you were born, how you grew up, what all that
That's,
stuff.
you bet. Well,
Yeah.
I was born in Drumheller.
Were you?
Yes, I was. And so was my dad. And I grew up, we moved around a little bit, but we ended up back in Drumheller when I was in grade 5. My dad was a guitar player and doubled on the drums. My uncle was a trumpet player and doubled on the drums. My mom was an accordion player. My grandfather was a banjo player. So there's a lot of music in there. And I started trying to play the guitar a couple of times as a kid, and it just didn't make any sense to me. But I always loved music and always loved tapping along. Like, I'd come home after school when I was in grade 1, stick on a Ventures record with Apache and Wipeout and all that stuff on it, and a Marty Robbins record with Gunfighter Ballads. So when I was about 14, I got a set of Styx when I was in Sea Cadets, and they had some drums in the back and some sticks. So we'd, in the breaks, doing that, we'd go pound on the drums and that. And then I got to take a set of those sticks home. So I was a couch beater, pillow, I had everything set up so that I could play kind of like a set of drums and play along with the records. And I asked my dad, "Can you buy me a set of drums, please? Please, I want a set of drums." This was in grade 8. I was already after him. And he said, "Nah," he said, "if I bought them for you, you'd play them for a month and then they'd sit in the corner getting dust, like the guitar did." So I had a part-time job, so I saved up all the money, $120. Back at that time was a lot of money, and bought myself a kit.
What'd you get?
They were actually a used set of, they were called tempo drums, Japanese kit. And they actually turned into either Tama or Star. I went back and I looked it all up. But yeah, those companies eventually became, the big Japanese companies.
Merged.
Merged in that. Yeah, I think, because there were Star drums back then. I think Star became Tama and Tempo became something else. Whatever.
And is Tama an Asian company? Yeah?
Tama? Oh yeah, they're Japanese.
Yeah. Huh. I did not know that.
So almost 50 years ago now, 1969, I got my first kit. And I did not let them sit in the corner and get dust. Every day home after school, playing all the songs at the time.
And not if you're paying for them. If you're paying for them, you're going to use them.
Oh
right?
yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. And back then, of course, if you wanted to learn something, you take the 33 and slow it down to 16, learn the drum beat that way, and all of that stuff.
Were you self-taught then?
Yes. Yeah. And when I moved to Calgary in '72 and started just playing, and there was a guy from Saskatoon who was everybody talked about him being a great drummer. So we went and saw him play at a club when he came through, and his name was Craig Khalil, and I'm not sure how you spell his last name. I saw something on the net. He doesn't play anymore. But anyways, I asked him if he would give me a lesson, and he said, "Okay, sure, come on up to the hotel," and next day, and he gave me one lesson.
What was that lesson?
And that lesson was rest position, up, down, rest position. 2 strokes, only this one and the grace note. That's it.
Okay.
So that was my lesson, and he said, practice all your rudiments, 60 beats a minute, really slow, and by stick control and advanced techniques for the modern drummer by Jim Chapin.
All right.
So I bought those books and worked them to death. And then later I got the Jim Chapin Volume 2, the big binder.
Okay.
Have you seen that? And,
I haven't seen that one, actually.
well, I've still got it.
Do you?
Yeah. And Joe Morello books. But yeah, I taught myself how
Master
to...
Studies, Joe Morello, yeah.
Yeah. And 3/4, 5/4 book of his. Just listened and watched.
And how old of a cat were you now when you moved to Calgary?
I was 17. Actually,
17?
I quit school to play the drums. I was halfway through grade 12.
And you said, screw this, I'm moving to the big city.
Yeah, well, what was funny I was down there and Painter came to town, and I was playing downstairs in the Elks Club and they were playing upstairs. Because I started playing out professionally when I was 15.
Really?
Oh yeah.
In Drumheller?
In Drumheller, yeah. I was playing Elks and Legions and everything every weekend, which was invaluable because I got to learn how to play schottisches, waltzes, polkas, what they called Latin stuff at the time, beguines, and all a bunch of different stuff that you don't hear that much now.
Yeah, bossa nova.
Bossa novas, yep, you name it. So yeah, I was making pretty darn good money for a kid, right?
Yeah.
Because I was making $300 a month when I was 17, and in Drumheller our mortgage was only $89.
Wow.
So that was good money for a 17-year-old.
No doubt.
So then I was Peter were playing upstairs, and I went, screw this, I'm going to quit school and move to Calgary, and move to LA eventually. That was my big goal.
Yeah.
And I tried to do that later, but didn't work out.
You didn't make it to LA?
No, I had everything was ready to go. I had signed went down there because a friend of mine had moved down there already, and he had a house gig as a jazz gig, and he said he'd sponsor me to come down and play with him. But they said a drummer from Calgary is not going to come down to LA and play when there's a million drummers in LA that can play. So I said, okay, this is what I'll do. So I went down and I enrolled in the Dick Grove School of Music.
Was this before PIT?
Probably,
Yeah.
This was like 1978.
Okay, I think 79, if I'm not mistaken, was when MI started.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Anyway, so I enrolled and everything, and then had everything ready to go. Was going to move down there, and they turned me away at the border because I was a musician going to LA, and they didn't think I was going to come back. And what happened was they did that to a lot of people that year, because up till that time, if you were an American musician, you could walk across the border with a signed contract saying you were going to play in Calgary or whatever. If you're a Canadian musician, you had to file your contracts 90 days in advance to go down there. Well, that year they reciprocated with the US musicians, and all of a sudden the border just got shut. There were people, I heard tales of people going down there that were nurses or whatever and had a guitar in the back seat. They said, oh, you're a musician, you can't come in.
So Canada started putting the screws to the U.S., and in return, the U.S. just bolted down.
Yeah, which happens.
That's
So
because you were at the border.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what was really funny though was
I wrote Dick Grove, the music school, and asked for my money back because I had paid up front, and never heard back from them. Well, 2 years later, I was doing a comedy supper club. The Jim Llewellyn Trio was doing this thing, and we had all these comedians come through, like Jay Johnson from Soap and Lyle Wagner from the Carol Burnett Show,
Okay.
and all these people. Well, the guy that was with Lyle Wagner, I forget his name, but I was talking to him, and he said, I know Dick Grove. He's a really good friend of mine. He would never, he said, he has a lot of people doing his paperwork, and sometimes they don't do a very good job. He says, give me your receipts and everything, and I'll get your money back. 2 years later.
Right.
And 2 years later, it came in the mail.
Really?
I got it within a month after I gave it to him.
Wow.
John Regis, that was his name.
John Regis. And Dick Grove. So he wasn't quite the, he didn't live up to his first name then.
no,
No.
obviously not.
Yeah.
So he was a Richard.
Right. That's right. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good that he came clean on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Like I said, the self-taught thing. I mean, when I was, after I moved to Calgary, I played in a few bands around town, and I ended up playing in Bo Diddley's backup band for Summertown.
Did you?
Yeah. This was 73.
Like touring or?
No, we just played a couple of gigs here and one other. But that was it. But we were the warm-up band, and then he just kept us, the rhythm section, to play with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you must have been pretty good for Bo Diddley to be saying, yeah, why don't you guys?
well, what was funny was we did a
Whole Jethro Tull set.
Hmm.
So he come up and he says, he said, oh, these boys will be good. He said, we'll just play, we played 2 songs, part of Bo Diddley, and he said, no, I don't want that. I want it, like, slower down,
Right.
a little funkier. I said, okay, and then played a little bit of something else, and then he said, you guys will be fine, just follow me.
Wow. So you actually played with Bo Diddley?
yeah.
I got the clipping up on my website.
Right. That's awesome. And so here's my question is, are you self-taught?
Yeah.
So you're playing Jethro Tull at what, how old would you have been now? 20, 21?
Oh, yeah. No, I was 18, 19.
So how were you making your way around music as lofty as that?
Well,
Not having much technique to pull from?
I listened to Thick as a Brick like it was a Bible. I learned the whole thing, basically.
Okay.
And same with Aqualung. And then the guy that I was also playing with turned me on to Yes, Fragile. So I listened to that album. That was another one that I just pulled apart everything I could think out of it, right? And then when I started a couple of years later playing with a recording act, Painter in Hammersmith, then we were out warming up for all these guys. So when I was, like, as soon as we get done playing, I'd be sitting behind the stage watching whoever was, drumming for, Kansas or Black Oak, Arkansas. Like I said, Jethro Tull, Kiss, Styx, Rick Wakeman, Jay Giles, UFO, Spirit, Rod Stewart.
Who was Rod Stewart using at that point? Was he using, what's his name, the Italian guy? Was he touring with him or no?
Oh, no, not Carmen Appice.
Carmen Appice.
But
Leslie West had Carmen Appice playing with him. And we played with Leslie West.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it was us in Kansas and Leslie West
Really?
playing in Springfield, Missouri.
Huh. So what were you drawing from then when you were listening to things like Aqualung? If you didn't have a lot of foundation, was it just kind of nose to the grindstone and I'm going to work this out? Obviously, it sounds to me like you were pretty disciplined as a young player, right? So did you practice a lot?
yeah.
No, I'd get up, like when I was, we were playing with the band in '73, the one that warmed up for Bo Diddley. We had a band house, and we would rehearse in the afternoons. And I'd set my alarm for 8 o'clock in the morning and get up, and I'd be on the front step with my practice pad doing all the rudiments, 60 beats a minute.
Right.
And then when I got through that, I'd go into the house and do the rudiments with my feet at 60 beats a minute.
Both feet?
Yes, because I had just started with double kicks within a year of playing.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm just
And then,
getting into it now.
So yeah, and then I'd get into the Chapin book right after that, and go through that, right and left-handed.
And which book was that?
that was advanced. It was the first one.
Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer. Now that was kind of a jazz book, though, wasn't it?
It was a jazz book.
Yeah. Because my drum teacher in New Orleans.
It was
when
also
I moved
in-
there.
yeah, it was
It
also-
had me going through that book. I wish I would have known about The Complete Drummer's Vocabulary by Alan Dawson. I wish I would have known about that book then, because that book kind of takes where the Jim Chapin book is kind of just a bunch of exercises. The Alan Dawson book takes it takes concepts where you swing with this hand and then you play, hi-hat, and then you interpret everything with the bass drum, cross stick on 2 and 4.
Actually,
I saw your lesson, and I bought that book.
Which? Oh, you did?
I did.
Awesome.
I
I'm
ordered
so
it-
glad somebody did
I
that. Thank
ordered
you.
it on Amazon and it came the next day.
No shit. Wow, Amazon's getting better.
Well, they've got a depot up by Crosshired, I think, now.
But they had that book?
But they had that.
That's stupid.
Because they knew Jim would order
Jesus,
it.
see, this is how close that book is to us, people. Let's get the book. It's a great book. You did.
I
see,
did.
That warms the cockles of my heart to know that you did that. Thank you. That means something.
Yeah, no,
And I appreciated the lesson. I went, your demonstration. I went, I'm gonna go get that book. And I was, because the Percussive Arts Society, I think they only do about
46, I think.
40 something, 40 and change.
Yeah.
And then when I got the book and read that there's 86 in there, I went, okay.
Yeah, and I could be wrong about that, but I think it's in the 80s, like you said. 80s.
It's 86.
It is 86.
It's 86.
Did I say 86 or
And the
84?
You said 84.
Okay, so there's 2 more than I. Damn, 86.
86.
Huh? Where have you cracked it? And
I haven't started with it yet.
you got to let me know.
But I
I intend to do that tomorrow. I've been doing a lot of running around, but
Cool.
I'm going to start right at the beginning and just work slowly through it.
Okay. You can message me anytime too. Like if something happens and you're like, "What?" It has a CD though, so the CD will take you through at 2 different tempos, I think. And
the first one.
The first one's him, and then second one's Alan.
is Alan at 108, and he's at 80, I think. Dude, that's awesome. That is really awesome. Okay, I got to keep straight pace here because we're
But
having an
no,
interview. That's awesome.
I'm always.
Looking for something new to learn or whatever. And when I went to Cuba, I came back and got Afro-Cuban books, and
Did you?
And I've got a thing up on YouTube with a left foot clave, and
Oh, you do?
I do.
I do.
So you're playing left foot as well?
Yeah.
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 Cool.
And it's a rumba.
It's,
It's the rumba one that I put up too.
oh, yeah, okay, okay.
Left foot rumba and the tumba on the right.
Okay. I have to check that out. I haven't seen that. I saw the LNM thing, but I haven't seen that.
That's a few years old though.
Right, right. See, isn't that great that, I don't know, I mean, you know, I just love the fact that people like to pursue knowing more about the instrument. You know, it's kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about the universe and everything that we've learned about the universe, that the universe, you know, or the planet isn't 6,000 years old like the Christians are telling us. It's a little bit older than that.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're not necessarily in the dark ages anymore. We've gone through an enlightenment, and we continue to be enlightened. And I know that there's a lot of problems with the planet today. I know that. But we also know so much more about the planet in which we live and that local area, a group of planets, and then further out from that, and the fact that there's 2 trillion galaxies in our universe is just mind-blowing and something that nothing, who can fathom that? But drumming to me is the same thing. It is a universe of shit that I don't know.
Yeah, and it just never ends.
Right.
It's always like, you know, like I said, I've been playing for just about 50 years, and maybe in another 50 years I'll get something done or down.
Right, right. And you know, it's the pursuit that is everything to
Yeah,
me.
it's a journey.
Yeah, it's the fact that that just going after and just learning, you know, just every 6 months, you know, like right now I'm going through left foot clave, and then I'm taking, what's the book you mentioned? I should know it, Stick Control.
Yeah.
And I'm doing hands and feet with, so, you know, right, left.
Yeah.
So my foot is right, and my right hand is left because I'm open, right? And so I'm doing that in eighth note triplet, 16th note, and 16th note triplet, all over left foot clave and casca. And so, yeah, and I can't, you know, I mean, I've gotten through almost like all the paradiddle things, so about 8 of them, but it's been tearing me apart. And I love it. I love to be torn apart and put back together.
Yeah.
And I just think that, I mean, why the hell not? You know, some people might say, well, left foot clave, you know, you're not a Latin guy, you'll never use that. And actually, I was supposed to audition when I went to London for a French band, actually, that had like Latin influence, and a lot of their stuff begged for left foot clave. And I thought, well, now I can't just, I got to keep going with left foot clave.
Yeah.
And now I just love it. I've fallen in love with being, you know, having the shit kicked out of me by what I don't know. And I couldn't be happier. Because you're a karate guy, aren't you?
Yeah.
Martial arts
I'm a
guy.
martial artist.
Martial arts guy, right? And so you know all about getting the crap getting kicked out of you, literally, right? And yet you do it because you know that it's going to make you better, right? Yeah.
Well, like, yeah, and it's funny because the same year that I started on the drums is when I first started taking judo. It was 1969. And then I took karate when I first moved to Calgary. And then I started taking Chinese martial arts, what you call Kung Fu. So Hung Gar is one that I know. And then started taking Tai Chi, and then teaching Tai Chi in exchange for lessons in Shingi. And then I went on to box, and they even wanted me to fight as a pro later.
Really?
Yeah, and I sparred with lots of pros, and well, I got the nose that swivels, and you know, all of that. And I even took fencing.
You did?
Yeah, and both Western style, like rapier and dagger, and then the traditional foil.
Right.
And I'm still actually learning more. I've been learning another Chinese art called Bakwa, which is there's Tai Chi, Shingi, and Bakwa that are the 3 big internal styles.
Okay.
Okay, so they're the famous ones. And Tai Chi is the one that's all slow motion.
Right, yeah.
You know, Shingi's very straight and linear, and Bakwa is you're circling all the time.
Okay.
Okay,
Are all these defensive things, or is there offense?
Well, there's
involved in
Shiggy's very offensive.
these? Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely, you're moving right into you're moving in on the attack. You're not backing up. They don't even train to back up. But the internal arts are different than the external arts because they rely on tendon and muscle and how you hold yourself, as opposed to muscle strength. Like you can have your muscles are like that, but your muscle might be relaxed like that, but it's just how you hold it, right?
Right.
Because you use skeletal strength. And most martial arts figure that out over time.
Okay.
Because if you don't hold it, like if you hold it too close like this, it's going to collapse and hit yourself. If you hold it too far, it's going to go, it's going to go underneath.
Right.
So that's just a quick.
Jesus, you're going to be fine during the apocalypse. I mean, seriously, you're not going to have any problem.
No.
You know, you got swords going on for you. You got these things. I mean, just that thing with the forearm scared the shit out of me. So, you know, good for you.
Yeah.
But now let me ask you this though: what do you get from these disciplines? I mean, drumming must be sort of similar, maybe in some natures, but in terms of the physical things that you're doing, or
It keeps me in shape to play the drums.
Is one thing.
Okay.
And I mean, I got into it too because when I was a kid and having the longest hair in Drumheller, you get challenged a lot, right? So I never fought, but I always wanted to be able to fight if I had to.
If you had to.
And I've never, other than boxing in the ring, I had one amateur fight, which I won. But other than that, I've only ever had one street fight. And cops asked me what I hit him with.
Oh yeah? Now, did that scare you at all when they asked you that question?
No.
Like, it didn't scare you? No.
I was actually
You
playing.
did what you had to do, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just did what I had to do.
Do, and I used, like martial arts, like Jackie Chan or whatever, I used what was around me. So I threw the guy into the sidewalk, is what I did.
Right.
But that is what it is.
Well, at least, it came in handy. I suppose you just didn't do it because you were having a bad night.
No,
you did it
actually-
because of a confrontation, I'm
What
guessing.
happened was the guy, I was downstairs playing my drums.
And there was a suite upstairs, and a guy came down and started pounding on my door, wanting in. I guess he wanted to hear the drums, and I had a young baby at the time, and I said, "No, you can't come in. I'm not letting you in." And he was kind of drunk, obviously. So I finally shut the door, and he turned around and threw a snow shovel at it. And I thought, okay, what's next? A brick through the window? So that's when I went out and got it on with him.
Okay.
And then after I let him go,
He went over, there was a little corner store right at the end of the street where I was living. And he was harassing the people in there. So then I ran over there.
After you had tagged
after I had tagged him and he was bleeding and all the rest of it. And so I went over there, and then he said, "Oh no, he's already left. He's walking through the thing," and they'd phoned the cops on him. And then they came and they said they wanted to talk to me. I went over. She said, "Well, what happened?" And I said, "Well, he threw a shovel at my door, and then he was over at the little corner store, and he said, 'Well, why is he bleeding?' And I said, 'Well, that's from fighting with me.' And then she laughed, and she said, 'What did you hit him with?' I said, 'I didn't hit him with anything. I pushed him into the sidewalk.' She laughed.
So you hit him with the sidewalk, basically.
basically, yeah, I got him in an arm bar, which is
Like this, right? And I was kicking him in the head till I dropped him. And then when I dropped him, I went down after him and slammed him into the sidewalk a couple of times till he went limp. And then I went,
okay, he could die, so I gotta let him up.
You gotta, yeah. Were you a younger cat?
Oh, I was,
at that time I would have been late 20s.
Late 20s.
Yeah,
Okay.
early 80s that would have been, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you moved back to Drumheller, am I guessing, at some point?
no,
From Calgary?
no.
No, I moved here in 72, and
Okay.
the only thing I did is I moved out to Vancouver when I auditioned for Painter. Because they were based out there right then.
Right.
And so we lived out there for 3 months, and then we came back, the band came back to Calgary.
Oh, okay. And then you just resided here?
Yeah, other than being on the road for a lot.
Were you on the road? How much were you on the road back then?
Back then, geez, I didn't have a place to live for a year.
Because you didn't need it.
That I'd just stay with people, or we'd have a hotel room.
Right. Now explain Painter to me, because I'm kind of curious. I never really have heard the band, but then I may not be of the ripe age to have heard. So who was Painter, and what was your involvement with it?
Well, Pater was a
local Calgary band that Daddy Lowe was kind of the mastermind behind that. Doran Beatty was the singer. Wayne Morris was the bass player. And they had another guitar player, Barrie Allen, at first, when they did the album, and they had a drummer called Bob Eagle. Bob Eagle was just my idol. I saw him play, for the first time I saw him play, he'd been with Painter for 3 or 4 days, and they played a concert. They called it Doodah Day. It was down at the sort of by McMahon Stadium. There used to be a big ball diamond there. I can't remember if there is now or not. Anyways, they had an outdoor concert, and Bob just blew me away. I'd never seen anybody play like that before, and he's actually a good friend of mine. He lives in Las Vegas now.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Does he still play?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He plays and teaches.
Really?
Yeah.
But yeah, he was really good, and he actually, it was him that made me switch from traditional to master grip, because I saw this guy playing, and holy crap, he could pound him or he could play light. But I just thought I'd never seen anybody that good, and a lot of people said that about him at that time too, because he's just a very talented guy, you know, and he started playing when he was really young.
Right. Was he a studied guy? Did he go to school?
I don't really think so. I think later he did, but I think mostly he just learned. His picture, I think he had one picture that he showed me was he made a set of drums where they lived out on the farm or something.
Made
like
them
that.
himself?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, tin plates and whatever.
Right. And did he make the shells out of it?
I don't know. I just saw this picture and it looked like
Kind of like it could be tubs or wash tubs or plastic pails, or you know,
Right.
anything you can beat on, right?
Some kind of
That'll sound like
you mean
something.
to practice on? He would have built this,
Yeah.
constructed this, huh? See, that's the thing. Guys had to get, kind of
and now
industrious, right?
Yeah, I mean
Because
now there's so
what do you
much.
do?
So much stuff out there on the internet and everything. You want to learn something, you just go type it in, and you'll find 5 guys doing it,
Yeah. 5 different approaches.
and 5 different approaches,
Yeah.
and then 20 variations on those from 14 more guys, right?
Right. It is quite stupid, isn't it? Like, there are some guys on there, I think of, like the 80-20 guy is great. I think of Mike, what's his name? I mean, amazing. He started probably 6 or 7 years ago, and now he's doing, Passaic Convention and NAM and, drum clinics and everything, and he's great. There are just some tremendous guys out there with great material. Sharing it. I think the one thing that I see, because a lot of these guys charge for, like they, if you want to study with them or you want to go through, all the lessons they've got, you charge for it. And I think sometimes there becomes this problem where they just kind of give you the, like the thing that is 6 degrees of separation removed from what you should know, and then the second thing you should know to build up to that 6th thing, and they just show you the 6th thing and go, well, come on, get busy. And you're like, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know what the first thing to do is. I don't know the first thing to do.
Yeah, they don't give you the foundation, the building blocks to get to that.
Yeah, they will, but you got to pay for that.
Yeah.
But they don't really intimate it in their lessons. And I think that's what I've been trying to do online, is just give that bottom-up approach, like this is the foundation, and this is what a 5-note phrase is, and a 7-note phrase, and this is how you play it. Sort of the Gary Chapey, Berkeley approach, which a lot of guys don't even tend to give credit to that stuff when I see so many guys playing those concepts that come straight from Gary Chapey. I'm not saying that Gary Chapey came up with them all, but he did popularize them all. You know, and now you have the Gospel Chops guys, you know, learning from, you know, Vinnie and Weckl and taking their stuff and turning it on its head, which is amazing. But all of that stuff, a majority of that stuff came out of Berkeley and came from Gary Chapey or Alan Dawson. And so that's, you know, I'm just trying to get guys to go back and learn that stuff. That's another reason I'm glad you bought the book, because I don't want to take credit or any sort of monetary, you know, assistance for something that I really didn't have anything to do with, except the fact that I can play it. I would rather that, you know, the money and the credit go where that's due, you know. So I'm glad you did that anyway. I appreciate that. So the whole karate and all that stuff, do you think that that had did it discipline you? Did it help you to sort of take control of your mind and your body? And
yeah, to a degree. I mean, anything. I mean, even playing the drums helps you. Is like a meditation of sorts, right? It helps your mind, and you know, doing anything rhythmical like that and concentrating gets you in the zone. You know, I've been downstairs playing and just zoning out and looked up. There was my wife, and I went, "Whoa!" You know? I say, flash the lights when you come down. Otherwise, you scare the crap out of me.
No
you know, if I'm deep in it, then something like this.
Right.
But it's funny you should say that, because I saw Buddy Rich on TV one time, and he was an honorary black belt.
Yes.
He was on some talk show, so he broke a board. And I thought, well, if he can do martial arts, then why can't I?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And because I was worried about hands, of course, right? Hands and feet. And so that part helped. But the discipline of drumming really helped me know what I needed to do with the discipline for martial arts. Because I'd already been practicing 4 hours a day before I went and started taking Hungar. And then when I started doing that, then I started working on Hungar 4 hours a day, and then I'd split the two, right?
Oh, yeah?
So that'd be my whole day, would be martial arts and music.
Right. And you were making a living then, too,
Yeah.
because you were playing out, and so you had money coming in. And, I mean, what a great ability back then to be able to practice, you know, do some martial arts and get yourself prepared physically, emotionally, mentally.
Yeah.
And then go out and make a living. I mean, that must have been a great time.
It was. I was very fortunate to live the life I have lived, in the times I have had and been in. You know, I look at the kids these days, and I mean, we played 6 nights a week, 5 hours a night. So you know, now, geez, they're lucky if they get a show and a set, and they have to go pay to play half the time.
Right.
So, to make a really good living at that age, playing stuff that you like to play, was just hard to describe how lucky I was. I remember we were out back one time behind one of the hotels, or not the hotel, but one of the clubs down on First Street Southwest, when it was kind of like an Electric Avenue, and there was lots of places down there. This would have been early 80s. And we're outside smoking a joint and going, and I said, you know what, guys, we're going to look back at this as the good old days, really the good old days, because all of us are playing, we're all playing in all these clubs, right? You know, we're visiting each other in our breaks and that, and we probably don't know how lucky we have it. And sure enough, when the boom fell off in the early 80s, about 83, 84, things changed drastically. I went from playing in a fusion kind of band, Celebration, to a country rock band. And then to another country rock band, even a worse country, a country band, but with really amateur type players, right? It was just like, but that's where the work was.
Right. Let me ask you this, when you said that to your buddies that night outside that club, and you were going to visit all your friends at all the other clubs, did you ever think that there could be an end to it? Did you see what is happening today then?
No. The one thing I noticed is things started to change once, and it would have been in '83. We were playing at a place called Pardon My Garden. And that's when they got the first of the video games into Pac-Man. And you'd see these, and then Donkey Kong. And you'd see these people come in, and before then, when they came in, the focus was either they were talking to each other or they're looking and listening to the band.
Right.
Now they got these video games. That was the beginning. And then when they started putting pool tables in, and then of course VLTs. And I was talking to a friend of mine that had a bar down on 4th Street, and he said with the 4 VLTs in there, he doesn't even need to sell a drink. He can break even with that.
You make that much money off the VLTs?
Yeah, because I said, why don't you hire a band? Why don't you hire a band? He said, I don't need to.
Yes, he does. He just doesn't know it. Yeah. Because you did play in that time where music meant something, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Where people, you're right, they either were talking to themselves, to each other, or they were watching the band.
The band was the entertainment. There was nothing else.
Right, and people went out, they sought it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was almost, I mean, you could go to a movie if you wanted to. Maybe you could go to a planetarium or something like that, but there weren't too many places to go.
No.
Right?
And the thing was too, is that every hotel would have they'd have their bar where the band would play. They'd have a cabaret where the band would play on the weekends, 3 nights. That would be and then the B band would come in and play the 3 nights in the bar, where the A band would move to the cabaret.
That's how it worked.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then quite often there was another lounge in there where there was another band. So you'd look at this and you'd see like, okay, 4, 8, 12 maybe, or 16 musicians being employed in one establishment that week.
In one place?
Yeah, in one place.
Yeah.
And there was so many bars like that. Like there was the Airliner, the Highlander,
Trade winds?
the Trade Winds, the Majestic, the Westgate,
Right.
Carriage House. It used to be the Crossroads, but it's something else now.
The Majestic, was that Frankie and Johnny's? Was that what was the hotel?
Oh, the Beacon.
The Beacon.
Frankie and
the
Johnny's.
Beacon,
Yeah, the Beacon. That's where I did the Comedy Supper Club in 1980.
Okay.
Yeah, downstairs in the basement, but there was a band upstairs.
Right.
In fact, one night, the Comedy Supper Club was slow, and something happened to the drummer upstairs, so Frankie and Johnny, Frankie came and got me and said, go upstairs and play with that band. So I had to go up and take off my suit and loosen my tie and play rock,
Right. So
which was fine.
You actually even knew Frankie and Johnny's?
Yeah.
Huh. Did you know Johnny?
Yeah,
So you knew them both?
yeah. Bright Marasco and Johnny, I forget his last name, Batante.
Okay.
I think that was his name.
See, that's, I mean, you're educating me here because I didn't know, I knew that things were better. I didn't know how much better. I didn't know that the trade winds would have been employing 16 guys a week. And, because I talked to Brent Soklovsky about this. And he used to, he told me that you were booked for like 2 months, 3 months solid.
Oh, yeah.
Like you would go to this place for, back 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
And, excuse me, and then you would go to this club and you were booked for 2 months, 3 months solid, maybe even more than that. Was that your experience?
You usually knew where you were playing for 4 to 6 months ahead of time.
Right. And you felt pretty safe in that, didn't you? I mean, you felt like your finances weren't going to be compromised. You felt like you knew that you were going to work and that you had money.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, back then, everybody was in the union. Not like now.
Were those all union gigs? Yeah.
Everybody was in the union.
So there wasn't a non-union gig.
There was no such thing as a non-union gig. That didn't start
Because
happening.
now that's all there is. Right?
Mid-'80s.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden that started happening. And I was working with non-union musicians, and I'd the sergeant at arms, whatever, come around, he'd look at me and went, okay, and then I'd get a thing in the mail that they're going to fine me $25 for playing with non-union musicians. So I wrote them a letter and I said, look, these are the only gigs out there now for us professional musicians. So I will continue to pay my dues and stay in the union. But if you find me again for playing with non-union musicians, then I will resign. And sure enough, a week later I got another notice in the mail, paid that off, sent in my resignation. And then I did a TV show a year or two later, had to join to do the TV show, and then resign again right away.
Right. What year would this have been?
That would have been 86, 87.
So things were changing. When did you start to see things change in the music and the way that music was being proliferated, live music? When did you start to see that change?
It really changed here in the 80s, I'd say.
Around
mid-80s.
Mid-80s. And what do you think?
And that's when all of a sudden they, like from making good money to having basically a lot of amateurs come in and just taking over the gigs for a lot less money. Because back in the 70s and early 80s, like, you and I were talking about this earlier, everybody had to be good. The competition was fierce. I mean, there was a lot of gigs, but the competition was fierce for those gigs, and the competition to be in the bands that were playing all the time was fierce too. So if you couldn't play, they'd find someone who could.
Because they wanted to retain their prestige as a neighboring band or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You had a certain level of musicianship that you just had to meet, or you weren't playing.
And nobody was going to let you sacrifice their money and
Absolutely not,
their position.
That was their livelihood.
Sure. So what do you think was the catalyst for that changing? What was the thing, the wrong turn at Albuquerque that made?
Well, there was a foreshadowing in the 70s. We were a house band at a disco in 1976. And there was only 2 discos in town. And the other disco was the Refinery. One I was at was called Noah's Ark. And, 6 nights a week, house band, like that. But you had to have live music. You couldn't have just a disco.
Was that a law? Like a bylaw?
The Alberta Liquor and Gaming Commission changed the law in 76 that said you could have recorded music as your entertainment. We got our notice.
Overnight.
2 weeks notice, just like that.
Wow. Now that was, like you said, that was a foreshadowing of what was to come.
And then gradually what happened was as the things started to evolve, so I went from playing in a funk reggae band back to playing rock, because there was either rock or country. Disco, of course, was all recorded now, and all the funk and all that kind of stuff was a one genre. But if you wanted to play and make money, rock, country, especially here in Calgary.
Right.
Or around,
But up until 76, it wasn't like that.
No. And then things really started to change. It became tougher and tougher. And then I did, I went from being in a rock band, and actually in 77, one of them was with Brent Soklovsky. It was called Silver Bullet. But I went from 2 rock bands to going on tour with the Allen sisters from the Tommy Hunter show. And that was my first actual chart gig, reading gig.
Reading?
Yeah.
How'd you learn how to navigate your way through that? Did you know how to read?
Yeah. I taught myself how to read.
Okay.
And just from working through all the books, for one thing.
Right.
That helps. But and Michael my friend in LA, sent me some drum charts, so I have a kind of a clue how they looked and everything. And then I started picking them out, and then I went, these are pretty sparse for the most part. Like,
A lot of leeway in
That's a
there.
good drum chart, one that doesn't have much on it,
Yeah.
right? Just swing,
Yeah.
right?
Just
play, here's the feel, here's the beat,
Yep.
what they kind of want you to play.
Right.
Then you start listening to the bass player and all the rest of it, see what else you can do.
Right. And every 16 bars or whatever, there's
Yeah.
some shots.
Yeah.
And you just hit those and keep
Yeah.
going. Everybody's happy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You start writing in every fucking thing I'm supposed to play. No, don't do that.
No.
You know what I mean? Just
Absolutely
leave me
not.
alone. I just want to swing. I'll sit here and swing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I just want to go back to the disco for a second. Because, and I don't know as to the legitimacy of this. However, it was an Australian guy that told me this. But he said when disco came in the 70s in Australia, they put a law on the books in Australia that if there was a club that was going to have disco in it, it had to be played by live musicians. And I thought, and he said that's why there's still a scene in Australia today.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't allow it to go canned. And I think you're probably right. I mean, Frank Zappa was talking about this in terms of the business of music in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Or as early as 65, the mid-60s. But that was the industry, that was the big conglomerates. I think that when it started to change for the musician, the person that was local to their geography was far more local to where they lived. You're probably right? Disco, probably, or canned music.
and that canned music also became the basis of what happened was a lot of drummers, bands shrunk and started using a drum machine and canned MIDI tracks. So you'd have a duo with a full recorded backline.
When did that start happening then?
Oh,
Like
that
the
was-
Lindrum was what, 79 to 82, somewhere
Something
in
like
there?
that, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of bands just started, they just pared down because they went, oh geez, we can get paid for a 4-piece band, or we can get paid for 4 pieces but only bring 2 because we've got a MIDI track behind us now.
But in order for that to happen, then the clubs themselves must have been compromised in terms of the quality that they were looking for then.
Well, if they had I used to get so disgusted, because you go and you see these guys, bunch of MIDI stuff, and you see some guy playing the piano, and you hear all this wonderful stuff going on the piano, and he's barely hitting the chords and singing, And I thought, this is such a farce. Because you're a computer programmer, you're not a player.
You're right. I'll go one worse than that. I worked on a ship going, 15 years back or whatever. And there was a band on there I think from Alberta. The ship was doing like the Caribbean. And it was a family band. And so, the first night I went up because I was in the orchestra, so I went up to watch the lounge act, because it was the first night, and so, check them out, see what they're like. And so I'm looking at the stage, and, it's kind of, it's family band shit, and it's not that great. And then I look at the drummer, and I kind of got to stop, and then because I don't really believe what I'm seeing. I look, and he's not hitting the drums. He's air drumming.
Oh.
And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, this guy's making probably about $800 a month US, more than me, and he's not hitting the fucking drums. Like, what is going on? So, and the music director is right beside me, of the orchestra, who takes care of all these bands. And I said, do you see this? Do you see what's going on? He's like, yeah, I don't know what that's about, but we're going to get to the bottom of it. And so, this is just on my mind for the next 3 or 4 days, and I don't want to go back up to the lounge because I don't want to get that pissed off. So I finally asked him, what happened? They gone, right? They're, And he's like, no. He's like, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm like, what do you mean? Why? He said, well, because that band is actually friends with head office, and I'm like, you got to be kidding.
Of course.
And so when we talk about, we're talking about a multi-million, maybe billion-dollar corporation, right? And that's the quality that they're espousing, that they're giving to their paying customer, is this kid that's not even playing the drums.
Yeah.
And I talked to the kid. I got the guts, not because I was afraid of him, just because I was afraid of what I might do to him. And I talked to him. I said, dude, like what? And he's like, well, you know, I mean, I guess we're getting away with it, so. And I just wanted to come on and, you know, my parents said I could have like a 2-month vacation. So I'm like, right? And I don't think that would have happened back in the day.
Well, it's funny that we're talking about not really hitting the drums. First TV show I did was we had to go in and record everything first, and then we mimed it for the camera.
Right.
You know.
Probably for audio's sake, right?
Yeah, because the sound wouldn't have been very good.
So we went in and we were a fusion band, like I was saying. So
That's not easy to mime.
So what I did is I knew it was coming. So what I did is I tried to play it the same every night for the month before the recording.
Okay.
So that when I recorded it and then when we went and did it, it would look right. And it did.
Okay.
Because of that, right? But I mean, it was like the one song that we were doing had some sevens in it and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun to play, but. And then,
Technically demanding, you know, and that's fine. That's a little bit different, though. You could play the drums. This kid had never played the drums. He didn't play the drums. He just went like this,
Oh, just like a monkey.
just like a fucking monkey.
Oh, jeez.
You know, I mean, I'm sure there are some monkeys that could have played.
I
better.
actually got hired though to do a TV show to literally fake the drum machine part that they had put in. So they gave me the tracks, and so I thought, well, the guy that wrote this wasn't a drummer, but he had good ideas, right? So there were little quirky things in there that I had to get, but I got them all and did the show, and then they watched it back and they liked it so much that they hired me for the studio work after that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you were the guy then?
Yeah.
See, that's great. See, that's great. I don't think this kid got hired to do anything except, you know, whatever it was that he was good at, because it wasn't playing the drums. I mean, it wasn't that he wasn't good at playing the drums. He didn't play the drums. He just simply didn't.
That is
So
just-
You know, truth is stranger than fiction.
it is, isn't it? It is. It is. There are. I'm sure we both have stories that fall against that that dynamic. So, you know, we're at the mid '80s, and things are kind of, you know, well, we're at disco, and things aren't looking good, right?
No.
And then, because did you go on to do other, like to get a day job and to do other things?
Yeah.
I think you did, right?
I did.
Yeah.
What happened was, once again, mid '80s, I bought a Yamaha CX5M music computer, and I had pretty much stopped going on the road because I wanted to see my daughter grow up. But anyways, I bought myself this music computer, and after a guy that used to hang out with the band worked in a data center, and I had him over one night and showed him some of the music stuff that I was programming, and then I went and pulled out that one, because it was cassettes back in that still,
Right.
and I put another one in, and I said, oh yeah, and I taught myself this program out of the book here that draws wallpaper. And he went, oh, that's really cool. And he said, you know, if you can teach yourself that stuff out of a book, you'd probably do really well where I work, at the data center. So like 4 years later, 1989, he said, and by that time I was scrambling trying to make any kind of a living playing. You know, you're lucky to make a couple of $300 a weekend. And so
That's hilarious, because that's when I kind of started playing, and I thought it was pretty good, but I didn't have a clue.
well, it hadn't gone up for years and years and years, right?
Right.
Because we were making $450, $500 a week in 1980 playing. So like 10 years later, with inflation, $300, like a drop in pay plus inflation, was pretty tough. So, and all the rents had gone up and all that kind of stuff. Because back in 1980, my rent was $4.25, and I was making $450 to $500 a week. So I mean, it was literally 1/4 of your money went for rent. Now they consider half your money going to rent is fine.
Right.
Well, it's such a different way of putting things.
You know, I mean, everything is different in that sense. I was watching Noam Chomsky. Do you know talking about Noam Chomsky? He's the linguistic professor. He was at MIT for years. He's also kind of a political dissident, American political dissident. And he was talking, I never knew this, but he was talking about wages, about wage earners, and the fact that when wages were instituted, it was one notch up from slavery. That the only difference between slavery and earning a wage was that wage was temporary. That you didn't always, and so you wonder, well, how did people earn a living? And it's because everybody did something. Mm-hmm. And they all made their money off that thing that they did. And then all of a sudden corporations come in, and corporations start to take over those things, and then that thing that was only one notch better than slavery becomes the way we do society. Mm-hmm. And I was just blown away by that. And then, you know, as you're sitting here talking about the decline of music and the earning, I won't say wage, because it wasn't really a wage, was it?
No.
It was an earning that you earned from your ability, mm-hmm. your skill, and for what you produced, you in turn got something for that. And I guess you can sort of see how things would go that way if the world is progressing in that fashion, mm-hmm. right? And I mean, what you're telling me, it kind of blows me away, because like I said, I talked to Brent about it. I was too young, even though I'm 52. But I was still too young, and I got a late start playing live too, right, playing out. But Brent told me, you know, that it was how good it was. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me that it was infinitely better than that. And I don't know, I mean, that's tremendous. But for it to be as good as it was, to, on the opposite side of that, be as horrific as it is now. I mean, what do you do? Like you said, where do you play? And you know, you and I, we talked before this. Yeah. Where do you play? There's nowhere to play anymore. Bands that 5 years ago, even at, you know, clubs like Vintage Chop House and stuff like that, I see the bands playing there now. Some of them. 5 years ago, and they're no better today than they were 5 years ago, I know that. Yeah. Wouldn't have ever been entertained to go into that room. And now, the majority of those bands going into the room are these bands that never should have, and shouldn't yet, mm-hmm. shouldn't today. They're no better than they were 5 years ago. It's just that that's how thin the pool is. Yep. Right? And I just wonder, man, is there a way out of that?
I don't know. I think it just,
It was interesting because that disco band that I was talking about, the guitar player quit to move to LA. He wanted to play jazz. So he went from 6 nights a week, playing all the time, down to LA, all of a sudden going, holy crap, there's no 6 night a week gigs here. They're all one-nighters, and they're showcases, and they're, you know, some of the money's okay, but a lot of it's just like, so he got into studio work and did a lot in that regard and made himself a good living eventually, you know, and he's still down there making a living at it.
In LA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He endorses Peerless guitars, but he also sells them at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, he got the endorsement long before but they ship him a bunch and say, do what you can. He's always putting pictures up on Facebook, like, look at this one, look at this one, look at this one. Beautiful guitars. Yeah. Right. But he's a really good jazz player, though.
Right, and he probably improved exponentially when he moved out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he had all the studio work, too, that he had to do. Made him a better player. A lot of sight reading and stuff, too.
Right, right.
And he played on a lot of albums, too. He'd done a lot of work. But anyways, I digress.
No, I think that, you know, once again, yeah, you take a look at how things have gone here, and I really think that Calgary was a holdout.
Yes, it was, and that's what I was actually kind of getting to was,
we had it really good for a long time, whereas most other big cities had gone far past that. Right. And I remember even here, when it started to go bad here, people telling me, it's still really good in Saskatoon. They've still got clubs and places to play. And then I don't know what it's like there now, but I think there's kind of a sweet spot that a city gets to be, where the music is, appreciated, liked, and paid for. And then all of a sudden it gets a little too big, a little too corporate, too much greed. Nobody wants to pay the musicians anymore, or they'll try to find ways to cut corners. And now they have way too many ways to cut corners, because they've got all the large TVs, they got UFC on Saturday nights and
Right.
all of that stuff going on. It doesn't matter if there's a band in there that can play or not.
I think part of it, for me, if I think about it, I think part of it is simply just oil and gas. I think the fact that we were a rich province, and I say were, I think we are still, but we're in danger of that.
Yeah.
But the fact that we had that, we had the Heritage Fund, we had things that could kind of keep us afloat, and we knew that, we were confident. And, we also, Calgary being, a corporate white-collar town, more or less, still had the ability to, if clubs were going to fail, or if a club failed, well, you still had the corporate side of things, you still had the corporate parties. And because we were such a small city in comparison to Toronto or somewhere like that, more bands, it was easier to get into that circuit. It wasn't like, oh my God, that's a closed door.
And that corporate philosophy really changed a lot too in the 80s as well, and into the early 90s, because whereas it used to be fine, people would go to work, and especially like Stampede Week's a good example. People would go to work and there would be no work done Stampede Week. Big corporate parties and all the clubs and everything like that. Getting into the early 90s, all that changed. No, there's no more, no, you stay and work here all week, you get a half day off for Stampede, that's it. And they stopped booking those parties. They might have at one time they did have one big day for the party for the company, but then they stopped booking those parties as well. So unless you're Dell or Microsoft or you're Oracle or something putting on some big thing for Stampede Week, the average person, no, you keep your nose to the grindstone, you go to work, and you get your half day. Go watch the parade or whatever, go down to the grounds.
Right. And yet there was a day where everything just shut down, and nothing was open on Sunday.
Yeah, and that's the other side of it too.
Right.
That changed in the 80s as well with the Olympics.
And that also changed our focus on commerce, I think. Because I remember when things started to be open on Sundays. I still remember the day where everything was closed. And it seemed to me that there was a shift in mentality, a much more consumer-driven focus when Sunday opened up. Mm-hmm. That we sort of forgot about that one day where we could just go, you know what, doesn't matter, I don't need to buy it.
Yeah.
I can wait till Monday. And then all of a sudden it was, the malls are open on Sunday, oh my God, we gotta go. And Sunday was now a day for buying.
Yeah.
Where before it was sort of just a day to rest and relax.
Yeah, kick back.
Right, and it seems to me that a mentality in us possibly may have changed during that time. I mean, we're talking about music, but I think that music is a symptom. Mm-hmm. It's not the problem. But the reasons why music, at least some of the reasons why music is failing and tanking, are the problems, but they are global issues. They're not just about music.
Well, everybody wants music, but nobody wants to pay for it anymore.
Right.
That's one of the biggest problems, because they think it should be free on the internet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Here's my contention as well, is that I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. However, because I think music should be paid for, absolutely, bought and paid for. It's someone's hard work. It takes us as long to get good at what we do as it does for a surgeon to be able to do it. I'm not saying that our stuff is brain surgery, but it takes us a long time.
I would compare it to being an Olympic athlete, because we have to work just as hard as most Olympic athletes, or I'd say as any of them, to get any good. And our shelf life isn't until we're 30. It goes on forever.
Until we expire, yeah.
Until we expire, or something starts to give out, you can't do it anymore.
Sure.
It's like when I first got my part-time job at the data center, the president came in one time and said, "Oh, I hear that you're a musician." I went, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you should, grab your instruments and a couple of your friends and come play at our Christmas party." And I said, "Sure, what's your budget?" And he went, "You mean you want to be paid?" I said, "Of course I want to be paid." I said, "I've worked longer and harder than most Olympic athletes to get where I can play competently, and no, I don't give it away for free." I said, "You're an accountant, aren't you? How would you like to come and do my income tax for free?"
We have to ask ourselves, what is the difference? And trust me, there's nothing entertaining about a tax guy.
But come to my party and do my income tax.
Right. And I want to be entertained at the same time.
And he said, "I never really thought of it like that." And he said, "Okay." He said, he didn't hire us, but
Because he didn't have a budget. He just thought the whole time you guys would just bring your little music, instruments and play your little music, right? Yeah. When it's not that at all, is it?
Nope.
I mean, the stuff that I saw you do at L&M, it comes from hard work. It comes from a lot of sweat, a lot of years stuck in a basement. Thank God, though, when you did it, you were still able to make some money, a good money, money that meant something and that took pressure off you, that meant that you could live a lifestyle or the way that you wanted to, right? And I don't think, probably back then, you felt bad about it at all. Or you didn't feel like you needed too much more.
no, I mean, I was very happy if I had, was getting by comfortably. I could pay my rent, eat what I wanted to eat, go out on Sunday because the clubs were closed, go for dinner.
Right.
And afford it and not be hurting at all. Now, gee, it's just a different world.
It is. It is. Does it concern you at all?
Well, I don't know what to do about it. I mean, my niece lives in Montreal, and they won a Juno a couple of years ago for adult alternative album. And I see what she goes through, trying to play, and she has to play in 2 different bands, and the record companies don't really do much for you anymore. I mean, you get a little bit of distribution from them, but that's not like when I was signed to Mercury Records. It was a whole different ballgame back then. And no, I see what she struggles with, and I still wonder. She's just in her late 20s now, and I wonder 10 years from now what she's going to be doing.
I wonder if there'll be any music left, really, except for maybe, I don't know. I think. I had Emery Chords on here not long ago, and he talked about the apocalypse, and we kind of smiled. We kind of joked about it a bit, and zombies, and all that shit. And I don't necessarily believe, unless there's some, sort of chemical agent that could be used to turn people that way, and I don't know if there is or not. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it seems the way we are going, we're not getting better. As a global entity.
Well, I tend to agree with that, because I think that everything is getting dumbed down all the time now. In fact, I watched a good article, a short video on music and how it has been dumbed down since the early 70s. How the same hooks are being used over and over again. The same melodic hooks and rhythmic hooks are just being, you listen to 5 different songs by 5 different artists, and they just about all sound the same now. And part of it is because there's only 2 or 3 people that are actually writing all this stuff, and they have a monopoly, or and the producers and and these writers, they just rehash the same thing over and over again because.
And they're probably in bed with record companies too, I would guess.
Of course they are.
Yeah. Right. And so everything's becoming homogenized. Everything is becoming, you're right, so similar.
It's like what Frank Zappa was talking about with the record executives in the 60s taking a chance on you, and artists in development and all of that.
Too.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And Frank's always been one of my favorite artists.
Genius,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
in my estimation.
Genius.
Yeah,
Absolute.
a modern musical
And
genius.
actually, I should, when I was talking about early influences,
Zappa was The Mother's Live at the Fillmore. When I heard that, I just went, whoa, man. And I thought, it's so cool because it's like a big show. You know, and Ainsley Dunbar would be going from one field to another field to another field to another field to, you know, whatever. So that really became, you know, I went, that's really good. And then after I started listening to Frank and he got more crazy with his stuff, then I just ate it up.
Yeah, Joe's Garage and
Yeah.
all that.
well, Wakajawaka, and
Joe's Garage, One Size Fits All. There's this neat little thing that Chester Thompson was doing. Him and the bass player playing this line in a song called Andy, and it's like da 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 da. And it's just like this little bunch of roughs and, you know, three-stroke roughs and stuff like that.
Right.
Just so cool.
I had something happen to me about a month ago. I've got Ralph Humphrey, probably a couple months ago now. I've got Ralph Humphrey as a Facebook friend. Doesn't mean we're friends, because we're not.
well, it was him and
Chester Thompson, they were both in the same, in Zappa's band at the same time.
At the same time?
Yeah, they were both dual drummer thing.
Well, he, it was, I think it was the first or second week that I put my lessons up there. And he commented on one of them just about the fact that you could, you know, that it doesn't have to be the sticking that I was doing. It could be any sort of sticking. And just the fact that he, that he, you know, sort of admonished me, you know, was fine. But then I think he, you know, kind of privately messaged me and said, you know, good job, man. Like, keep going. That's good stuff. And I was like, Jesus, that's Ralph Humphrey telling me I'm doing okay. I think I'll keep going then. You know, that meant a lot. You know, because I didn't grow up with Zappa, but you know, by the time I was able to understand or at least listen to music like that, I mean, it, you know,
yeah, I think
other stuff was
I think
Ralph was playing on, well, there was a lot of players on that album, but the Apostrophe, St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast was just, it's such a cool song. And it goes into this Latin thing at the end, and I think that's him.
Oh, Ralph Humphrey, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's those kind of things that, I don't know, you know, that just make me not want to put my sticks away, you know?
Yeah.
And the fact that I think that we need to fight a fight, that I think there is a fight. We need to start standing up and fighting back for everything we've lost as a human species, or as people, you know, because we seem to be forgetting what are the most important things. And I know that what was important to us wasn't necessarily important to our parents. And what was important to our parents wasn't necessarily important to theirs. I get it, but we've gotten so far away now. I don't believe that we are, you know, that we are just in another historical time, you know, and that we need to go through all this to come back. Because one of the problems that we face that we've never faced, only in the last 70 years, is nuclear war. Never in Roman times or in the fall of great societies, civilizations, did we ever have to worry about that. And now we have that to contend with. And people can say, well, you know, you're just, you know, you're crazy, you're scaring us. But I'll tell you what, I saw things, just like I'm sure you did, I saw things 30 years ago that didn't look right. And if I would have spoke up then, people would have said, you're nuts. But now everybody agrees with me.
Yeah.
Right? And I just wonder in another 30 years if things aren't going to be going a direction that we don't want it to go, and more people are going to be hurting. And there's going to be less money for us.
Well, it's, yeah, I think what it is that we got...
The government's trying to control just about everything we do now. It's become, they're becoming more and more, the politically correct movement, for one thing, is really bothers me sometimes. You can't say anything now without, you can't disagree with someone, or if you do and they happen to be a different color than you, then you're a racist. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff.
Right.
Or if they're a female, then you're a then you're a chauvinist pig. You know, because you said something that you just didn't agree, but everything's getting turned around now into that political correctness.
It is, but I think it's all deflection.
It is deflection
Right.
from what's really going on.
Exactly. I think that all the gender pronouncing and all the shit that you're talking about, all these things are all deflection. Donald Trump is a fucking deflection. That's all he is. People want to say sure, you know, in a perfect world, Donald Trump would not be president. And I'm sure there is a parallel universe somewhere where people are going, Donald Trump for president? Are you nuts? Is there a universe where that would happen? Yes, there is. Here we are.
Yeah.
We are it. I get that, I understand it, but to me, everything is a deflection. All the arguing and all the infighting, all the fact that you know the Republicans hate Democrats and Democrats hate Republicans, everything is corrupt, and that is what people are deflecting from. The fact that everything is fucked up.
Yeah. Well, basically, everybody came to North America to escape the whole feudal system and to be free, supposedly, get away and start their own life where they could be free and do what they wanted to do. Now, we've got this whole bureaucracy and government that is no different than those feudal systems used to be, and
That we escaped from.
that we escaped from. Now we're exactly the same. It's just a different, you know, like how can I put this? There really is no difference between that and us now anymore.
I don't think
we
there
have.
is.
I mean, we have the same kind of. We have prime ministers that are the son of prime ministers getting elected. States, you know, they got the president, the dynasty, the Bushes, stuff like that. The rich people they're not called nobles anymore, but they still control everything.
Right. And I even wonder how much
And it's not like,
government controls.
well, that's just it, right? The super rich people are the ones that control government.
Corporations control.
Corporations, yeah.
Yeah.
Because most people in government, they don't do anything. All they do is try to get reelected so they can stay in government.
They just want a 6-week vacation.
Yeah.
You know, they you know, I mean, once again, and you know, do we all have all the answers for this sitting around? No, I don't think so. But I'll tell you what, I've always thought that one of the answers is the fact that somehow we need to abolish the system that we have. In terms of, I'm not saying, you know, that we shouldn't have government, but somehow something has to crash in order for something to be reinstated that is just and honest and true and fair.
And I agree with that. The trouble is even if we did it, it would only be a matter of time before the people come in and corrupt it again.
Right.
Because it's all about who's got money and power.
Right, and I think that is my, you know, that's where I come down to, and I know this would be the hardest thing to do, and I have no answer for it at all. But I do know that that there is and I can't remember the name, damn it, I have to look this up, because I keep talking about it, and I don't know the name of this thing in which I'm about to speak, but there is a certain number of people that the majority of us can be known by or know. Right, and that is a fairly small number. It's not in the thousands. It's somewhere around 150 people that you can either know or be known by. It's a community of people, right? And the fact that we are 36 million people, which is not a lot of people, relatively speaking, but you know, it's still a lot of people. 36 million of anything is a lot of something. And we are spread out as far as we are in this vast country, and we have one hill that governs us, that everything comes out of that. Yes to dope, or no to marijuana, or yes to marijuana.
Yep.
And whatever legislation or whatever we are governed by comes out of that place. And I think, I don't know how to do it, I know it's utopian, so anybody can argue me and I won't have all the answers, but I do know that if we were a group of 150 in pockets, in tribes, for lack of a better term.
Okay, yeah.
For lack of a better term. I don't know what else to call it. But I don't necessarily mean tribal. I just mean if we were 150 people, then let's say there was someone that governed over us in that 150. I would be able to go to that individual. I would be able to see him for who he is. And if he ever tried to pull anything, it would be harder for him to do in a group of 150 people. That doesn't mean he wouldn't try. That doesn't mean that he may not get a few people on his side. But there is, in the animal kingdom, and I talked to Emery about this, there is, you know, a fair warfare, you know, that a lion will wage war, you know, the male will wage war against the other ones. Whoever wins, well, there is your hierarchy. There's one who wins and will establish control. And they'll give it to him willingly. They know that they're defeated, right? So he becomes the alpha, of course, and that's fine. As long as he governs, or whatever they do in the lion tribe, pack, or whatever, as long as he does that benevolently and with the interests of the group involved, he's fine, right? People respect him, nobody fights him, and he gets the best looking lioness, and everything's good. If, however, he deals harshly or nefariously within the group, because a single male couldn't take him out, all of the males will get together and kill him. He will be taken out. Now, I don't mean that in our 150 we should go around killing people that, what I'm saying is that he will be taken out. That lion will be taken out. And so we can, I think we can ward against nefariousness just by proximity, just by the fact that I know you. And I may not be able to do anything to you, especially with the fact that you know all your karate and stuff. But my point is that against 10 of me, or 50 of me, even if you have 20, you know what I mean? The 150 know that what is best for them individually is for the 150 to stay together.
Yeah.
So nobody's going to fuck around. Nobody wants to mess with that, because if you do, you will be gone, so will your lineage and your children, and you will cease to exist, right?
Yeah.
And you think about that in terms of the future and in the present, right? Well, I'm not going to dick around, because if I do, they're going to take me out. And, you know, Bob's right there,
Yeah.
you know, and he's ready to go if I fuck up. There is all accountability, and everything works when it's localized. When it gets this far out, then that's where corruption comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because you have no influence. Even 150 people here can't do anything to those people on the hill, because they're just not listening. It's not, 150 aren't enough.
And it's not even that they're not listening, they are protected. If you
Yeah.
try and go and have an audience with them, number one, you probably won't get it.
Yeah, that's true.
If you try to bust in and have it, you'll be arrested and taken away.
Yeah.
If 100 of you try and do that, they will pepper spray you
Yeah.
or tear gas you.
Riot police,
right?
yeah.
Right? And if there's any more of you, then they will start shooting you. And that government was always, and we know this, we know this, the government was for the people and by the people. Right? It's always been that way. But when it turns, and when it turns this far, then we start to, I don't know, some people are fine. I know that there's still a lot of money in this town. Who wants to take that risk? The thing is, you won't take that risk until what happens, you know, the old saying that they, you know, they came for the Jew, but I'm not a Jew.
Yeah.
So I didn't care. And then they came for the black person, but I'm not black. So I didn't care. Then they came for the homosexual, but I'm not gay. I don't care. But then they came for me.
Yeah.
And there was no one to come to my aid.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, once again, I don't want to be, you know, I'm not trying to spook anybody. I just see a progression of that. I'm not saying that it will become it, because if I do, I'm going to sound like an idiot. I don't want to sound that way. But if you don't see a progression of that, then I think you're not looking.
Well, and once again, I think it goes back to they keep trying to deflect things away from what's really going on with the political correctness and the gender, all of that kind of stuff. Because if people could really get in there and change something, they'd probably be assassinated.
Absolutely. Because there's more, because it doesn't even have to do with the government. It has to do with the fact that if you're going to change something, you're going to have to dismantle a lot of scaffolding.
Yeah.
And that is all underpinned by mounds of money.
Yeah, mounds of money and
Bureaucracy that runs on that money.
Right.
And the people that have the corporations and conglomerates that have that money, that keep feeding it in there to keep the status quo the way it is.
Right. And we know that there are people that if you pay them enough money on this planet, you can get things taken care of. And that's right. That's why we don't stand a hope in hell. Certainly not on our own.
well, and the thing is
If you actually worked your way up and became one of the billionaires that had that kind of influence, then you wouldn't change anything anymore because then you're one of them.
It all, yeah, it's socio...
You would become one of them gradually. You wouldn't even know it.
Absolutely.
But then once you had that billion or billions of dollars, you'd want to protect it. So by protecting it, you keep everything in place to do that.
I understand that the reason that I'm talking the way I am, even the fact that this show exists, in some way has to do with my socioeconomic status. I know that. Because I know that if I was playing around the world right now, if I was with this band or that band and I was flying here and flying there, this show wouldn't exist. I don't even know that I would feel the same way as I do. I probably would, though. I'd probably feel the same way. But I don't know that I'd be doing this, the things that I think really matter. And you're right. I mean, Jordan Peterson talked about this in terms of the Nazi guards of World War II. And he said that these were really good people. They were benevolent people. But because of the situation that they found themselves in and what they were asked to do, it became easy for them to do it. Because if they didn't do it, they stood to lose more than gain. That's why, in the Auschwitz and places like that, the people delivering Jews to the ovens, in many cases, were Jews themselves. Because if they didn't, they too went the way of the dodo. And they just didn't want that for themselves. And the people that were carrying, the bodies and everything else were of either Jewish descent or they were in that camp for a specific reason. And you're right, we will protect what we have. We don't need to protect what we don't have. And I think that that's why, one of the reasons I decided to do this, because I thought, there's nothing to lose. All I do is stand to gain by talking to a guy like you and by saying to a guy like you, thank you for what you've given to culture, to the esoteric elements, to the things that you can't put a monetary value on. Thank you for your contribution to the planet and more locally to our geography and to this city. And that's what I'm trying to do with everybody that I think maybe deserves a little bit of credit. And I look at NMC, at National Music Center, and I wonder what the fuck is going on there.
well, my niece played there.
Yeah.
They didn't have a clue how to do the sound for the band, and then I found out that they very rarely have a live band there. Well, then what the hell is the place for?
Everybody.
So that you can have a couple of, like, Katie Lang's Jacket and there's a little drum circle room that I thought was kind of, they had some electric drums. You can go and play there with a bunch of people. But
Was that the room with the Neil Peart?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, drum kit.
But and I went to Chad Wackerman's clinic there. I thought that was good.
Oh, I didn't know he went there.
Yeah. But that was was it last year? I can't remember. Anyways, but I thought, what the hell is this place for if they're not having live music in it? I think they've done a bit more of that now. I've heard that people are actually playing there at the old King Eddie and stuff like that. And they've started to fulfill the vision that they were supposed to fulfill in the first place, rather than just having a nice big building and talking about music.
Right. Well, yes, and I hope that is the case. I went in there, and I'll tell you what, I love the building. I love the architecture.
awesome.
I think it's a beautiful, very well-constructed building. And I don't know that much about architecture, but I certainly, something to look at. But to me, it's kind of a whitewashed tomb. Like, our Christ would have said, years ago, that you look great on the outside, but there ain't fuck all going on inside.
Well, that's it.
That was my point. There should be a lot more going on there. There should be clinics, workshops, live bands
You should be doing a clinic there.
regularly.
Yeah. Right, for your community, for the people of this city. And I'll tell you what, if we're going to get music back, if it took corporate money to get us where we are, maybe it takes a little bit of that on the benevolent side to bring back the things that really matter. The fact that kids, that they do something for kids, that there's some kind of maybe gospel chop course, that once a month or once a week, kids can, drummers can go in, and, there's like 4 drum kits set up, and you learn a chop, and then everybody plays the chop. And you come in every week and kids are getting fed, junior high, high school, and then they can go on to wherever, Grant McEwen, because there ain't much here, or, somewhere else. That to me it should be serving a community function and also letting our nation know that there is, that there is greatness in the confines, in the boundaries of our borders. And I just don't see it. I see a Katie Lang thing, and I went in there a while ago, and I was amazed at how much wasn't in there. I was looking around going, there's a lot of goddamn space in this place.
Yeah.
And things that could be filled up. Your name, your picture could be on the wall. I'm not saying, no, I mean that. And I mean it. I really mean it. Because you are a guy that impacted the culture of a place. When I hear your name, when people talk about you in the music community, they talk about you benevolently, about the fact that you did something, that you changed something. I talked to Brent Siklowski, I talked to Jerry Proppy, I talked to anybody in this town. They go, Jim Llewellyn, what a great guy and what a great drummer. What other criteria do you need to be on the wall?
Well,
That just made my day.
You made mine, so what the hell? Why shouldn't I? You deserve it. If we're going to wrap up, I'm not wrapping up until I just say that I think that not only do you deserve it, but I think that so many people are deserving of it in this city, and maybe even in the rest of the cities. We're not that big of we're a huge country and very few people. We should be praising each other. We should have so many programs dealing with art and music and culture and finding ourselves. What is our identity? What is it attached to? Who are we? I can tell you that New Orleans is the birthplace of jazz, right? I can tell you that America, stands for something and has something. We're still trying to figure it out. And I don't think that we need to. I think we can get busy doing that. And how do we do it? By loving on each other. By me sitting in front of you and telling you how much I appreciate you. That you and I get together and we do something for for another generation coming up that needs to know what you and I know. And so many people like us, Steph last week, or Pat Bellabo. Who knows more about music where we are than those people? Nobody. And we should be utilized. So
I really think that this is a great thing you're doing, and I really appreciate the fact that you invited me on.
Dude, I would be amiss if I were to ever think, I don't even know how I would ever think that Jim Llewellyn would not be a part of this show. That Jim Llewellyn should be just a part of the culture of a city, and that I shouldn't have to do this, but National Music Center already had the thought, and they're busy doing it. It wasn't my vision. I'm a drummer, for God's sakes. I hit things for a living, and I try to do the best I can at that. I'm not Charlie fucking Rose, like I'm not. I don't have the teeth for it, Maybe the intellect, but it's not my deal. I just think that nobody did it. Nobody's done it. We're closed and not open, and I just don't live that way. That to me is certainly when I moved to the States, the American mentality was inclusive. All you had to do was prove yourself. You just got to play. Do you care about what you do, and are you okay at it? And it's okay if you want to get better. We'll take you on from here and we'll move you forward. And I don't know. I can't think of anything else that humanity's about. Here I am preaching, I don't know.
That's okay.
Yeah, maybe
That's
I missed
okay.
my calling. Maybe I should have been Jimmy Swagger. But I played for him, but
Evangelist,
yeah,
a drumming evangelist.
right? Maybe we need that. But then, well, like you say, we have a drumming evangelist, and then you make so much money, you become corrupt, and you end up with a hooker in Motel 6.
Yeah.
I don't need that either.
Yeah.
But no, I think we can all be evangelists, for this thing that
Music.
that matters,
Yeah.
for music itself. Dude, I appreciate you. I thank you people that are watching this for being a part of this. And there's a lot more to go. There are a lot of people just in this local geography that I think, if it's not too lofty to say it, I think deserve to be honored and praised for the work they've done. Because it's what matters at the end of the day. I know we all need to make a living. I know that, at least on paper. But I think that this is important as any other pursuit we could be endeavoring to make. So thank you for tuning in. Once again, I'm not going to divulge who next week is, because I may not even know who that is. But I thank you, Jim, and I thank you, and we'll see you next week.